Hello, Internet. This is Neil recording a brief intro before we get to what we actually recorded, because what we recorded, we always record a bit in advance. I try really hard in the creation of this podcast to keep away from political topics, and as a result, I doubt that we're not going to talk much about a lot of what has happened recent events in America during this episode or during future episodes. That's not what we're about. We are primarily about entertainment. I know I rail on a bit about the pandemic, but I don't know. As a person, as a white man, I feel like I am not in any real sort of position to talk with authority or to even pretend to authority on this subject of the recent of further recent issues and outbreaks of police brutality to people of color. I will make this following statement. It's wrong. And the murder of Mr. Floyd was a murder. I don't feel like there should be any reservation in making that statement. Speaking for myself, I cannot speak for the opinions of my co-hosts, though I would hope that they think the same. That's pretty much all that we're going to have to say on this matter. But I felt it would be irresponsible to simply say nothing at the same time. There are people who can speak with much greater authority and much more clearly on this matter than me. And I do encourage you to look into information in that regard. That's all, like I said, we have to say in this matter. Now on with the actual show. All right. We ready to do this, everybody?
Go.
Ready Player 2.
Insert coin. Hello, Internet, and welcome to another episode of Geek Fanthology. I am your host, Neil Cordray, and I am joined this week by
The One True Ben.
And
Mike.
And yes, we're still recording remotely. We're probably going to keep doing that, probably the rest of the year at this point.
TBD.
No offense to my wonderful co-hosts, and much as I would love to see your actual faces in person, there's a pandemic on, and until there's either an effective treatment or an effective vaccine, I am personally being reclusive, because I don't want to die, and I also don't want to contribute to someone else's death, because I probably won't die, but I care about other people. By the way, that's why you wear a mask. It's not to keep you from getting sick, everybody. It's to keep you from being sick and not realizing it, aka being what's called an asymptomatic carrier, and breathing on someone and making them sick.
I think that's pretty common knowledge at this point.
I had to actually have it out with someone who I respected a fair bit on Facebook the other day, because they didn't grasp that basic concept. They're like, well, the mask doesn't help me. It's not about you. It's about other people. Sorry, that I'll climb down off my soapbox, but that was an actual point of anger and frustration for me the other day. So, anyhow, let's get on to topics that are fun and that are fun to talk about. Signal boosts. What we got, folks?
I've got something. It's fresh on my brain. I just tried this game called Transistor, which I'm apparently very late to the party on. It came out in
Yeah,
2014.
Transistor's great.
Yeah, it's super good. Well, wasn't really trying to be punny, but there it is. Apparently,
Anything
the
by
developers,
Supergiant Games.
Supergiant Games, yes, who
Right?
were best known for Bastion up to that point, I believe, which I've heard
Hmm.
really good things about, but haven't gotten around to playing. And it's just, I'm not that far into it yet, but it's really awesome. The first thing that stood out is just the art is just gorgeous. It's like practically all hand drawn stuff, and it just looks so good.
And the
And
music's supposed to be really
yeah,
freaking
music's
great
good
too.
too.
Like,
And it's just like it's interesting. It's like uh, this neo noir thing going on with like the look and feel of the world, and information is kind of revealed to you as you play. And they do a really smart thing where it's like an action slash tactical RPG where you can kind of do like the space like input your commands and then unspace like the Baldur's Gate games of yore and such. But it's got a little more of an action feel because you can also, I mean, you can also do it real time and you actually move around the world. It's not just click click necessarily. But anyway, they do this really clever thing where your abilities are functions. And it's like a function is like a computer program type thing. And you basically, it's macabre. You get them off of, well, with the exception of your own protagonist, you get them off dead people. It's kind of like their soul or conscious or something. And so, like, that person is a function. And as you experiment with the various functions, like you select certain functions to have active, or you'll take one that's not active and put it on an upgrade slot to like cause another effect on one that is active, like adding AoE to something or whatever the case may be. You learn more about the individual whose function it is. Like you learn more of their backstory and how it fits in the world and stuff. So it encourages you in a mechanical perspective to learn more about the lore and the mystery of the game. So it's really well written, and it's one of those things where it doesn't hold your hand. It just trusts the audience to be intelligent, which is always something I appreciate. And it's fairly straightforward gameplay, but there's enough variety with the different stuff, the different functions, and how they combine and everything that it can be more advanced. It's like easy to learn, tougher to master kind of thing, and it doesn't have like a traditional tutorial where it's just like, oh hey, we're gonna teach you how to do all the things. Click this, press this. It just throws you right into the chaos of it, and you're trying to figure out what's going on. But it's really well designed where you learn that stuff as part of the game, so it doesn't feel like clunky or boring. Or that's my pitch. It's on Steam. That may be on other platforms.
it's
I'm not
on
sure.
many platforms. I'm on Supergiant's webpage right now. I've not actually played the game. I've only watched it played, but it's one of those things where I was like, yeah, I could totally get down for that.
It's really
It's
good.
on it's on Steam, it's on Switch, it's on PlayStation, and it's on Apple.
There you go. And I checked, and it has a overall rating of 94% positive on Steam. So
Yeah,
there you go.
and pretty much anyone who like Supergiant Games doesn't really make bad games, and they always make very interesting games from a world perspective and an art perspective and a music perspective. I really liked Bastion a lot. Um, and just because I want to throw this 2 cents in because it's not a visual medium, but you can picture this a little bit. Transistor's art style reminds me of a mix between Art Deco and Art Nouveau. So if
I'd
that
say
helps you any.
this game specifically, and probably anything from the developer Supergiant Games, are great examples of whenever someone is like either saying games aren't art or they're skeptical of the statement that games are art, just point them to those games. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to deny that it's art. And this is apparently the culmination of a lot of stuff they learned from their other games that
Yeah.
came before it. So it's no
Transistor
wonder that
was
it's
their second game, Bastion was their first, and then they made Pyre, and then they made Hades, and I actually don't I hadn't heard about Hades, but it's apparently only just now in early access, but all of them are really interesting games.
so yeah, that's my thing.
So this week, one of the things, or I don't know if I'd mentioned before, if I had been doing it yet, that I was actually starting to play Fallout 76.
You did
Um,
mention that last week.
okay,
Not saying that
and
you
yeah,
can't keep talking about it, but
Last episode at any
you know,
rate.
last time.
yeah, and I've forgotten it. But also, thing I've been doing, that I run across, YouTube channel called Dingo Doodles. It's from a young artist. She talks, she does, basically she uses it as a storytelling medium, both visual and audible. And so she's been doing it for a little while, and you can see her storytelling process evolve through each one. She has a bunch of D&D stories, on there. So those are the ones that got me in there. Got me caught up in it. And let's see, that's most of what I've been, most of the new stuff I've been across.
So for what I've been, what I've been wanting to bring up here is actually kind of older stuff. I was reminded of how great Drunk History was recently. Well, actually is because they're still making it. Because I randomly ran across Brendan Urie of Panic at the Disco getting drunk and then reminiscing the history of Fallout Boy, which led me just sort of down the rabbit hole of, oh yeah, drunk history is a thing. Also, it's just really hilarious having, Panic at the Disco's, talking about Fallout Boy because people often compare the two hilariously. Aside from that, there was something else I was going to say. What was it? Oh yeah. I picked up Halo, the Master Chief Collection on Steam for like $40. And they really were just very solid shooters. And the multiplayer's still fun too.
Which of those games had you played before?
So I had played through the original Halo. I have still yet not played Halo 2. I decided to replay through them in release order, and so I've been replaying through Halo 1 at the moment. When I was in college, one of my roommates had a 360 and had Halo 3 and Reach, so I've played those before on console. But you know what I'm playing them on right now? The kind of a machine that's actually built to play first-person shooters.
Of course, Halo was ironically designed for a console initially, but initially it was designed for a Macintosh. That's the weirdest thing of this story. Halo was originally going to be an Apple thing, and then it wound up being the flagship launch title for Microsoft's newfangled console,
Yep.
Xbox.
So it went went over to a rabid competitor too, which is pretty great. Also, a brief retraction. In one or two episodes past, I said that Babylon 5 was available for streaming on Amazon Prime. Apparently, it is not. I am sorry.
Sad face.
Is not or is no longer.
Or at least it no longer in my country. Try using a VPN and I don't know. Try Uruguay. I don't know.
Right.
I keep meaning to get a VPN so that I could watch British Netflix because apparently they have the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
That's awesome.
That I could also watch BBC, but
well, there's that.
I suppose we should probably get to it. Spoiler of the week.
I suppose.
This game is probably going to suck.
Yep.
We haven't actually really explained what we're talking about today, so here we go. Way back in Season 1, in either Episode 12 or Episode 13, it's hard to say because I actually released them as a double episode, so the RSS feed's kind of broken. I need to go back and fix that one of these years. We talked about movie adaptations from video games and from books. Well, today, we're going to turn that on its head. We're going to talk about video game adaptations from movies, or as they're more commonly referred to in the biz, movie tie-in games.
Yeah, those obligatory releases.
Yeah, hence why these games are probably, the game is probably going to suck. Before I forget it, there is one book tie-in game that I can think of, and it also sucked. And that was
Dante's Inferno.
Actually, Dante's Inferno was an entirely mediocre game. I wasn't thinking about that.
Okay.
So there are two book video games that I can think of. Dante's Inferno was just a run-of-the-mill God of War clone. It was
Right.
But no, I was thinking of on the Super Nintendo, The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring.
Wow.
Because at the
Got that on the
time, Pete hadn't made the movies yet, hadn't glued feet to Elijah Wood's feet, glued hair to Elijah Wood's feet yet. Um, glued
Glued
feet to
feet to
Elijah Wood's
Dang.
hair. That's right.
That's nightmare fuel right there.
No
And
doubt.
man, did that game just totally suck.
What was
So
the
yeah,
gameplay
so
even like?
So it it was kind of similar to The Legend of Zelda in that you went into a bunch of caves and solved puzzles. Um, the game pretty much like you barely got out of the Shire um, in the game. There were like 8 cave dungeons you had to do, and the real problem with it was um, everything. Like the puzzle design was bad, it was highly unintuitive, and the combat was atrocious. Um, and pretty much you only ever like fought wolves and crap, and like it. Also, you were constantly being followed around by Sam, and then later Merry and Pippin too. So it was a weird sort of like. Also, you had a party, and it was bad.
It sounds like somebody took Lord of the Rings and then it's like, hey, you know all that cool stuff about Lord of the Rings? Let's try it without that. It's like, who needs all these cool like Urukai and cave trolls and dragons and wizard shit?
Yeah.
Let's just take all that shit out of there and see how it works. It's a
right.
horrible idea.
Lord of the Rings
What was the other one?
Volume 1, The Fellowship of the Ring, I think was what it was called,
What's so
apparently.
funny is that they were planning on doing a whole thing of it, and then it ended up
Oh,
being
and yeah, that did not, no.
it's always funny whenever there's a game that has like an obvious like, hey, this is going to be a series of games title, and then it just doesn't happen because the game was such a failure. Like
Right.
Sin Episodes Volume 1 on the Source Engine, and then there was never a Volume 2.
What was that again? I'm sorry?
It was Sin Episodes Volume 1. That came out around when Half-Life 2 did. That was on the Source Engine, and there's a game that was actually really popular called Sin several years back, and then they were trying to
Yeah.
like revamp it, and they did not make fetch happen. Oh,
One.
that is too. Hold
Not
on, that's too perfect of a segue, so I have to take it. There is apparently a Mean Girls video game. Were you guys aware of this?
no.
Oh my,
Yeah,
really?
yeah. And get this, it came out so late that Lindsay Lohan was a fucking dumpster fire by that point, so they didn't even put her face on the title. Either that or the money she wanted for her likeness was through the roof, or both. Take your pick. But yeah, Mean Girls came out in like 2000, it was 2004, I believe. And then this game came out in like 2010. It was like 6 years or something. And it's like a shitty version of Puzzle Quest. And like you do these little like puzzle things and you like solve little puzzles and then that like makes your put downs better or something. It's oh my god, it's so dumb. I'm
I didn't
sad
even
to
see
know
that
that it
on my list.
exists. It hurts my
Yeah,
soul.
I
But
didn't even
there you
see
go.
that on the list.
You're reminding me of the existence of the Hannah Montana Guitar Hero clone.
Oh gosh, is this the same? I have this on my list too. It may well, I don't know. Actually, I think this may be a different shitty Hannah Montana tie-in, which this is kind of murky territory because it was mainly a TV show, but they did make a movie about the TV show, so I guess it counts. So now we're
Yeah.
talking about a shitty video game, about a shitty movie, about a
Mhm.
shitty TV show. This is shitception.
Well,
Right.
it was a tie-in game. That's what I'm like. Theoretically, we're going to focus mostly on movies, but we can get these sort of weird one-offs out of the way, like books
Yeah.
and television shows and epic poetry. Um, oh yeah, I'm also reminded of one other thing, real briefly. It's a sad thing to mention, but the Lord of the Rings SNES game, made by Interplay Interactive.
Oh wow, a blight upon their record.
Indeed.
So Neil, the game you're
Well,
referring to is that Hannah Montana the movie, the game?
I don't think so.
Oh, because that's also a thing. It's like a shitty karaoke revolution game, but then between doing the karaoke, you have to like do these stupid little like click, like find and click or object, well, whatever that miss
Oh,
step to like get the
oh,
thing,
geez.
go to the concert. Yeah, it's like, oh boy, it's like a
right.
crappy karaoke game that has a shittier game that you have to plod through in order to get to the crappy game.
You gotta bust your ass to get to this crap, to the mediocre stuff.
Yep.
No, what I'm referring to was actually, oh geez, I'm gonna have to Google search for this, aren't I?
I mean, I think we got the gist. It
Yeah,
is a
it was.
shitty Guitar Hero clone that is branded
Mhm.
with Hannah Montana. There's not really much else to say
Yeah,
about it.
it had 3 buttons, and it didn't actually matter when you hit any of them. Um, and it was a television plug and play game, which is
Oh,
its
So
own
it's
right, which is its
dumpster
own.
fire.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say it is its own separate genre of shit
yeah, I was
games.
gonna say because I know I said it didn't matter what platform, but I think I got to draw the line somewhere. It has to be on
Right.
an actual
Okay.
console or computer, not its own little like, hey, it's a self-contained game.
Right. Otherwise, we'd have like Captain Power and the Warriors of the Future. So
I remember Captain Power and the Warriors of the Future,
it was,
made by
and
J.
it had its
Michael
own little
Straczynski.
video.
Everybody.
No idea what you're
But there was a
talking about.
game. Oh God. So there was a video game slash TV show, and you could
With
actually
toys
play
too.
along at home with toys that you could play along and interact with on the screen.
So is it a show that became a game?
So it was a
It was
show
a
that was
show.
designed to interact with the action figures and toys.
So it's really just a
Yeah, it was.
show that had action figures, and then it pretended to be a game.
Well,
Yep.
kind of. It was an interesting thing. Um,
All right.
And the show itself interacted with the toys like they would. They would
We should just have a gimmick game episode, and then we can talk about it then. How about that?
yeah, the screen would flash, and it would interact with photo sensors on the action figures. But yeah, I think you're right. We can shelve this for another episode at some point.
yeah.
Um,
The gimmick game is most definitely an episode.
yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
it's worth talking about, despite the fact that yeah, we're gonna bag on a bunch of bad games.
Hmm.
We should mention, good movie tie-in games too, because folks, those things actually do exist.
Law of averages. When there's that many of them, some of them are going to be good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Someone's gonna hire a decent writer.
The game that I go to is Batman for the NES, by Sunsoft. Really, really solidly good Batman game that ostensibly follows the plot of the movie. Although I don't remember him jumping around through quite so many electrified sewers.
It's an
Um,
action platformer, basically, right?
yeah, it's a really solidly good action platformer with its main sort of gimmick being wall jumps. You can jump off of any wall that doesn't hurt you. Um, and there are a lot of walls that hurt you. So there's
Kind
a
of
lot
Mega
of
Man
it has a
or
lot of verticality to it, and yeah, it was just really solid. And that and the Joker cheated because like if he shot you, you died.
Oh yeah, there's also Batman Returns was a beat 'em up on Super Nintendo that was actually pretty fun.
Mm-hmm.
There's some really awesome Batman games that have come out more recently, but those aren't related to a movie. Those are just their own thing.
And the Arkham
The
games
Arkham
are
games,
all
yeah.
worth just saying, hey, by the way, if you ever really wanted to know what it's like to be
To be Batman.
Batman,
Right.
Mm.
the Arkham games are a good way to experience that. Kind of
Oh,
like
that's a good
the
segue,
PS4
actually.
Spider-Man game.
Yeah, I was gonna say Spider-Man. No, that one's just kind of that's its own thing, right? It's not like tied to a specific
No,
movie.
yeah, it is its own thing. But Spider-Man 2, um, which was pretty much universally considered to be one of the best Spider-Man games, like one of the best superhero games of all time for a long time, and
That was essentially considered the best Spider-Man game until the new PS4 era Spider-Man,
yeah,
PS4 era Spider-Man came out.
and one of the better just games of all time too. Um,
Because they actually nailed web slinging. Like no one
yeah.
had really got it before then.
Hmm. And it was a movie tie-in game. It was a tie-in game for Spider-Man 2.
Also, Bruce Campbell is the narrator, so what's not to love?
Hmm.
Well, yeah. Anything with a Raimi.
Although I must say, sadly, there was a shitty Evil Dead game on here on this list. Evil Dead
Well,
Hail to the King was a very generic,
Yeah.
silly action game.
I'm also going to briefly mention that I think there should be an episode based off of Shrek video games.
Which
I'm not saying you should
Shrek?
play a bunch of Shrek video games. I am saying, however, there are many, many Shrek video games, and we could definitely watch YouTube videos of people playing them and get a very good idea about their quality of many of them. I
Spoiler
actually
alert.
own Shrek Treasure Hunt
Right
for the
there.
PlayStation. I should point out that the only reason I own it is because I bought my PlayStation used from a friend, and I got every game that he owned with it, which included a copy of Shrek Treasure Hunt. Caleb, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm sorry, but Shrek Treasure Hunt wasn't a good game, and you probably remember, and you probably are aware of that at this point.
Right.
Well, it could be its own episode, but we should definitely mention GoldenEye 007. It's one of the
Yeah, I was gonna say
one of the
that's
awesomest
when
games
you think
ever,
of.
and was actually directly related to the movie. It actually followed the plot.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and and I mean, I got a copy. My all my N64 games are at my parents' house.
Mhm.
But from time to time, uh, back when I visited my parents more often because I'm a bad son, um, me and my sibs would sometimes sit down and play GoldenEye because
Right.
it's just still that good.
Yeah.
Apparently, the multiplayer version was just kind of tacked on at the end as an experiment, and that became one of the most one of the things it was most known for because this was before the era of online console
Yep.
gaming, and it was pretty much just all local split screen. Of course, they did the whole System Connect thing later on, but that tended to be more of a PS2,
Mhm.
Xbox era kind of thing.
Yep.
I always thought it was funny the fake names that they'd have for the guns, which I don't know if it was a licensing thing or if Nintendo was just being Nintendo, but like instead of an AK-47, it's a KF-7 Soviet.
As I understand, it's primarily a licensing thing.
Yeah.
If you're going to call a gun a Kalashnikov AK-47, then you have to license its existence. You have to license the name from Kalashnikov arms.
But what about
Hmm.
like in Counter-Strike and stuff? They use all the real gun names.
Then they probably licensed them.
Yeah.
Either that, because remember the original one came out in '97,
Right.
and they may not have, they may not have had they may not have had the ubiquitous nature of it at the time.
It
It
was
depends
either
on because
Potentially
there's a
that.
lot of things.
well, either they didn't have those things ready to go, or they just didn't. Well, I don't know. I would say they didn't know if it was going to be that successful, but apparently they were very confident in the game because they took all this time to do it right, and the game didn't actually release until just under 2 years after the movie did, which is a
After the
weird
movie,
because
right?
usually with most of these movie tie-in games, the game will come out like a week before the movie even does. Like the game will come out
Right.
like right after or simultaneously or right before the movie the game will release. So this
That's
was an
actually
unusual
Mhm.
case.
Yeah, that's actually another way you can tell that a movie tie-in game is going to be good
Mhm.
when it's not released within 2 weeks of the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, with that, so yeah, GoldenEye is like the gold standard. I see what I did there. Uh, yeah, for video game tie-ins, and it matched the plot. Because I mean, there's like one of my favorite ones to hate is Fifth Element video game. It's just like has nothing to do with the actual game.
That is a blind
Uh,
spot in my gaming radar, so please elaborate.
Um, God, it's been so long. I never owned it. I watched somebody play it, and I was just like, it had nothing to do with the plot, and I was at a total loss
That's
as
PlayStation 1,
to.
right?
I think so.
And that's around when the
Oh
movie came out,
yeah, no,
so yeah.
I have in fact seen people playing this game.
Forgot that was a
Yeah,
thing.
and evidently you can download it now. So
Yeah, don't. The thing here's the big important great thing about the Fifth Element game. It
hmm
was on the PlayStation 1.
hmm
It had one disc and had full motion video.
The old FMV.
Yeah, and
So,
you alternate between Lilu and Corbin.
yeah.
And yeah, it was just it was. I mean, its best rating was like a 5 out of 10 from IG.
Another thing that's kind of funny is there's a video game of Tomorrow Never Dies, which was the Bond movie after GoldenEye, which was apparently just a terrible game. And they decided to go third person with it, and it looked like crap, and it didn't look like it played much better, and just such a weird choice after such a popular game.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, as far as games that have they're nothing like the movie, this is just so arbitrary. There's a Austin Powers pinball game because when I think Austin Powers, I think pinball.
Yet at the same
see, that was
time, it is
okay.
worth.
So the thing is,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
You first,
Well,
Ben.
the thing is there was a lot. There were almost every movie had a video game back in, or had a pinball game back in.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
they had nothing
there are
to
a
do
lot
with it,
that still
you
get
know?
made too.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is pinball games aren't expected to have much to do with the movie. They just have
But
to
you have to
bring
understand though, I'm not talking about a physical pinball game. I'm talking about a shitty video game that is a pinball game.
Oh, like
If
Sonic
it was a
Spinball.
pinball machine, that'd be fine. If it's good pinball, it's good pinball. I don't care what the branding is. No, this is a
Right?
shitty
Yeah.
game that is a pinball game.
Shooting.
Mhm.
Like that generic space themed pinball game that comes with PCs. Remember that?
See, that's a pretty
Mm,
That was
good
actually a solid
video
pinball game.
pinball game.
Yeah, and it was
yeah.
free and bland. This was a thing
Right.
that they actually associate with a brand with. Just ugh.
I would also like to point out that when it comes to to actual machines and cabinets, I don't think there's such a thing as bad pinball. I'm biased, perhaps, but it like I guarantee you that if if Neil ever wins the lottery, there will be a couple or two or three pinball machines in my dream house because pinball.
I'm sure it's harder to screw up, but I'm sure it exists.
Right. So, um, so the earliest one I could find on my list of movie related is Star Trek Phaser Strike, 1979. It's yeah.
There's
Basically, it's a
apparently
shootout.
a first-person shooter Star Trek game in the late '90s that was really good. Like I remember PC Gamer giving it like a editor's choice 90-ish% rating. Forgot what it's called. It's been so long, but I could look it up. But it's kind of funny because it sounds like a similar concept, only they actually executed it well.
Well, actually, it was basically this one was you had phaser banks at the bottom of the screen that you were shooting. So
Oh wait, is this like you mean like one of those arcade games like Lethal Enforcers or Area 51 or some shit like that?
um,
Or is this more like Missile Command?
it's more like Missile Command. Wow. Huh. But when I was looking at Star Trek games, the oldest Star Trek video games is 1971 of the text.
Oh, I found it. It's called Star Trek Elite Force.
Star Trek Elite.
Yeah, FPS Star Trek game. It's actually supposed to be really
That
good.
was a Voyager spinoff, and was honestly kind of okay.
When I was growing up, I played a couple solid Disney platformers. There was Aladdin and Lion King. I think Aladdin was probably my favorite. That one seemed the most solid.
Yeah, those games were really good.
It would be, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a Disney game that did not have at least one video game adaptation. Excuse me. Although some of them sucked and some of them were great and some of them were kind of in between.
Right. So okay, because I want to also because there was a Star Trek game that had the Kobayashi Maru test.
Was that the Super Nintendo game?
So I'm trying to find.
No, because the Super Nintendo game I'm thinking of was the Star Trek: The Next Generation Super Nintendo game that had away missions, and you were stupid if you didn't bring data with you every single time.
Right.
Because at least in one of them, there was a thing involving having to turn airflow on in a mine, and Data didn't breathe, so he didn't slowly die in every room.
So it's part of Star Trek Starfleet Academy. There you can cheat. It's also in Star Trek Klingon Academy, and it's in several. But it also is evidently in Star Trek Voyager Elite Force.
Well, that just seems like a just an
Actually, the first
obvious.
mission is considered the the character's Kobayashi mirror. It's not actually.
Well, it just seems like a good trope to put into a video game if you want like some kind of
Mhm.
like beat your high score or challenge mode or some shit, like literally a thing that just see how long you can survive. There's not really a way to win it.
Right. But yeah. So I mean, it's interesting the things that make it into video games. But so kind of to get to the theme of the episode, what makes a good video game tie-in?
And what makes a shitty one? They're both the theme of the episode.
Well,
Right. So yeah, and what's I mean, well, we can tell usually what makes a shitty one is, hey, let's put the name of the movie on it and throw some random
That's a
scenarios
lot
together.
easier to answer that question.
yeah,
That's fair.
the shitty
Yeah.
ones are all going to be pretty universally some form or another of shovelware, with the
Yeah.
exception of one notable exception that we will get to closer to the end of the episode.
So if I
Okay.
just had to say rapid fire, what makes a shitty game? I would say
Mm-hmm.
lack of time, too many constraints of what they can and can't do, lack of
Mhm.
budget, people that don't care
Mm-hmm.
about the material, aren't passionate about the material,
Yeah,
choosing the wrong genre, or the developers not having any experience in the genre that makes sense to make the game based off of. Those are
yeah.
the things that come to mind most
Right.
readily.
It's
Yeah.
almost always a lack of care. It doesn't have to be good. It just has to come out next 2 months
Right.
because that way
People
grandma
will buy
will
it.
buy it for her grandchild because so here I got you the Thor video game.
The old lady voice did not carry over well. It sounded like you were
Yeah.
talking from across the room, like into a can or
Yeah. I heard
something.
Okay,
radio.
well
Yeah.
I'll try it again. Oh, so you like video games and you like Thor, so here's that Thor video game.
Right.
By the way,
Yeah.
the Thor
Exactly.
video movie tie-in video game sucked.
Not a surprise.
Um,
Thor was among the weaker movies, even though it was good. It was not, it was very cerebral by comparison to some of the other movies.
yeah,
Which was, to me, it was its strength, really, but still. Um,
Thor 2 is the worst,
yeah, I would agree. It is the
and
worst.
Thor 3 was the best when it comes to the Thor
I
movies.
I didn't. There was at least the part that I liked. I liked at least one thing about Thor 2, to briefly derail the conversation, and that was the humor with Mjolnir trying really hard to get to Thor during the fight. Essentially, because he kept walking through portals, and Mjolnir being like, "Ah, for fuck's sake, now he's here."
Yeah, there's some good sight
Right,
gags there.
right. Um, but yeah, it. So, and a lot of times, the elements that are game facing, that are player facing, has nothing to do with the plot. It's just random things thrown together, that don't have anything to really do with it. They have the thinnest of plot lines. Is, hey, you have to get to these sewers to get to this place for no apparent reason, you know,
Yeah.
and not enough content. I mean, a lot of times it's just, hey, here's 4 hours worth of gameplay.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, a lot of the games are just super short and also like too easy.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's a common theme is
So,
like you beat the game in a handful of hours and it's super easy.
Yeah,
right. You just spent $60 on this shit. What's
And it makes sense because oftentimes what they're trying to do is they're trying to cast as wide a net as possible at people that don't necessarily play video games normally. It's like, oh, this person likes the movie or likes the IP, or so we'll just
right.
kind of
So let's
throw
put all
this
that in
Fisher
here.
Price My First Video Game at them and call it a day.
And
whereas a good movie tie-in game is going to have thought and design and would probably be a pretty good game without needing without the benefit of the IP.
right.
Like the Batman game that I mentioned. Take out Batman and make him I don't know.
Deflator mouse.
Yeah, really good Jumping Man #3, and it's still a good game.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, make him Deflator Mouse, although that would be a very different game.
yeah, it's
Also,
totally
the
nice.
Tip game for the
Right.
Super Nintendo kind of sucked.
Yeah. Well,
How do
okay.
you
So
mess it up? It was a beat. You make a beat 'em up, but it just wasn't a very good beat 'em up.
right. So another thing, is good controls.
Yeah.
Because like with GoldenEye, you could do what you needed to in that game. Whereas in a lot of the
Actually,
really crappy games,
having replaying it, it's still a solidly good game, but Controls is actually one place where it really kind of fails. Like trying to aim and not just let the machine the game aim for you is actually a real pain.
right?
Eh,
Yeah.
and
But you
never.
didn't really need to because you could just shoot 1,000 bullets and it would probably work eventually.
I never
Yeah.
really had too much issue with it personally.
Yeah.
Agree to disagree. I thought it was fairly intuitive. Although it was weird
Well,
that
like
you
I said,
couldn't
it lets you
jump.
do what you needed to do. It didn't get in the way of. It didn't really get in the way of game.
Well,
But
it was one of those points where the control, it was kind of a transitional period where people were just getting used to like doing the whole analog thing on a controller, and like the N64 controller was weird, and some people liked it, some people didn't.
yeah, but
I still maintain
so
a GameCube controller is weirder.
but
Which
so
sorry, it reminds me of one thing that's interesting and worth pointing out. Um, these days, when people play shooters on, oh hey, actually this is even relevant to the. I was still searching things. These days, when people play shooters on a console, you're used to having two analog sticks, one for movement, one for aiming, and then typically a trigger button. That was not the norm until a little game on the PlayStation called Alien Resurrection, which was the first game to do that to have that particular control scheme. Um, so interestingly enough, even though that game kind of sucked and everyone said, "Man, this really kind of sucked," like I don't like this control scheme at the time. Um, it was something that um, that has at this point become the default way you play shooter games on console anymore. So
Yeah.
yeah, I thought that was interesting. Yeah, it was also a movie tie-in game, so it's even relevant to the topic at hand. How do I don't do that? What's wrong with me?
yeah, but so what else? I mean, what else contributes to it? I mean, having the right genre, for it, so
Yeah,
you're
I
not
mean, I think
using a
overall
top-down
it's just
game.
what makes a good
Mhm.
game is what makes a good movie game.
Yeah,
Like it's still just
Yeah,
making a good game.
yeah, that's the
right.
real
I mean, it
trick.
sounds like a cop out answer, but it's true. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the main thing. But
Tight
yeah, I would
controls
say
and solid gameplay.
not having a
Good
Um,
bizarre
story.
genre is good,
yeah, the
because
the
Yeah.
sometimes things just don't work.
the the real thing that differentiates a good movie tie-in game with a bad movie tie-in game is most often, more than anything else, the amount of time spent making it.
Right.
Yeah. So for the ET game, as an example, because it's like the
I was
bottom of the
holding
barrel.
off on ET.
Okay.
Let's get into it.
Well,
Okay,
all
that
right.
was the game I had teased earlier. I was like, yeah, we're gonna. I figured we would finish with ET, but okay,
hmm
you brought it
Well,
up. Go for it, man.
so ET was done in 5.5 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason it took the thing is the reason they had that little time was because the negotiation on the game rights took too long.
And you had to make the Christmas 1982 release.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah.
This ET is the reason that movie tie-in video games honestly it's the reason that they have bad press, like automatic bad press.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, it's because people remember ET for the Atari 2600 and the fact that it
hmm
caused, well, honestly, it didn't actually cause, but it definitely contributed massively to the video game industry crash of 1983.
Yep.
Right. Well, and see, part of that too, Atari was a big, when you get into that, Atari was a big culprit in that, not so much the game, because they changed the contracts, the relationship with the distributors. They canceled a lot of contracts and then basically said, hey, exclusive deals, with select distributors. And a lot of places just said, okay, fuck it. You know. Um, and that caused a lot of cancellations on those orders. I mean, you get to the history behind the ET game, and it gets worse and worse as you go along.
So yeah, it's a bad game too. I've watched a couple speed runs of it because speedrunners are masochists by nature. Um, and so, what's more masochistic than not only playing a game to the point where you can play it blindfolded, but playing a bad game to the point where you can play it blindfolded? Um,
Yeah.
Yep.
and by the way, it is not a myth. There really was a landfill full of ET games as well as like other games like Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man, and things. It was buried in
Alamogordo.
Alamogordo, New Mexico, and um, excavated games from the burial site are now collector's items. So there's some humor in that particular.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a whole documentary about that.
Yes, in case anyone is interested, it was called Atari Game Over.
Hmm.
But yeah, E.T. was just an atrociously and it was also just a bad game. That was the other problem. Like it just, I mean, all Atari games require a certain amount of imagination.
Mm-hmm.
Um, But ET really kind of stretches it a little, stretches your required brain a bit.
Right.
Also, very few people like games where the score counts down.
It was, yeah, I mean, it was just a like bunch of squiggles, and you were collecting pieces to
Yeah, to try and phone home.
phone home, and
Hmm.
it
Yeah.
just there's a lot of
And you had
randomness
to,
to it. It just like you just fell into holes over and over and over and over again, and hope that you found the thing.
Hmm.
right. Yeah, and you had to collect Reese's Pieces. Um,
Was that a tie-in?
Oh yeah, like
well, that was it.
well,
Yeah.
E.T. featured Reese's Pieces, the movie, a
But I
bit.
guess it kind of already was. So yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, see, E.T., yeah, because in the movie, that's how he lures E.T. into the house with Reese's Pieces, and it made Reese's Pieces, the juggernaut candy that it's become.
I mean, I like to feel like the perfect blend of peanut butter and chocolate made it the juggernaut that
But
is.
Reese's
That
Pieces
it's
don't really
become.
have chocolate; they're just peanut butter.
Yeah, they're just peanut butter. Um,
Well, yeah, peanut
but
butter and shell, not really
yeah. So, but the
as
thing
far as
is that
Reese's
it
cup.
could be the best thing ever, but without good marketing,
Hmm.
nobody's going to know.
But E.T.
And this
eats
was the
Reese's
ultimate,
Pieces, therefore we should eat Reese's Pieces.
Because
right?
you want to be
Because
like an alien that's hunted, don't you?
right? Well, ET was evolved,
That then
and
dies?
and comes back to life.
Well, yeah. But
So, yeah, for a minute, yeah, not for long, but
so it's a very bizarre thing to want people to emulate is all.
I am still of the opinion
right,
that E.T. is actually a terrifying movie.
it really is. Well,
I
ET
mean,
himself is
should
kind
be.
of terrifying to look at to begin with. The only thing that makes him, but anyways, we digress. So, but
Here, let me lighten
yeah,
the
and I
mood
think
by mentioning Street Fighter the movie, the game.
Oh yes.
yes, you want to talk about
Oh.
gameception,
Because we
a
talked about, I
video
mean, we
game
talked about
of a
games that are
movie of a
shitty,
video game.
but
Yeah,
then there's games that are shitty based on movies that are also shitty. So that's like a
that are
whole new
based
level
on
of
games that are
shitty.
pretty good.
Yeah,
Right.
the fact that this
Yeah,
was
it's like
Street Fighter
16
the
levels.
movie, the game, is just glorious. And what's
Yeah.
even better in my opinion is that really it's a Mortal Kombat clone.
Hmm.
It's not even a Street Fighter game. It's more accurately a Mortal Kombat clone, because it uses similar appeal. It's got the digitized actors. It's got blood. It's got more simplistic super moves. It has fewer combos, which is the thing that kind of differentiates, um, at least at that time, Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter. Street Fighter was, combo based, fast paced, whereas Mortal Kombat was a little bit more. Um,
Just clunkier.
well, I wasn't going to say clunkier. It was more methodical.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely true. It wasn't until Mortal Kombat 3 that the pace of the game started to
Yeah.
pick up. The first couple Mortal Kombats were pretty slow compared to the Street Fighter games.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
So,
it looks terrible, plays terrible. It's just
right.
one of the most unnecessary things of all time.
Ever. Yeah. So my next question is, because we have a bunch of movies coming out this year and things like that. So if you could create the ultimate video game tie-in? What movie and how would the game play?
That's a good question.
And there were, because I was just thinking about it, it's like, we're talking about what makes a good one and makes a bad one. And I was
Well,
thinking,
there's one that comes to mind. They kind of already did it before the movie came out, but there's the Deadpool game that came out about 10 years ago, and that
Oh
was
yeah, that
actually
game's great.
it was a really fun game. I mean, most of it, of course, is like the humor and the voice acting and the presentation. Like the gameplay itself is solid, but not like fantastic. It's just like a solid third-person action game.
right.
It's fun, but it's not anything groundbreaking.
And
But
you can't buy it anymore.
what do you mean?
You can't buy the Deadpool game anymore.
Why?
Is that out there?
Well, I mean, you could buy if you can buy the physical media, you can buy it, but you can't get it digitally anymore due to distribution issues.
The whole merger business.
I believe actually there was some music licenses or something in it that expired.
Yeah.
So similar to how you can't get the Scott Pilgrim beat 'em up anymore because licenses expired. Which
Well,
is a
I got
shame
the
because the
physical
Scott
game,
Pilgrim beat 'em up
so
was really
rad.
freaking good.
Got the physical copy on PS3. No takes.
I bought it on Steam before it became unpurchasable, and Steam, if you own the game, you can still download it because it's still because they will hold it in their servers for you.
But yeah, I mentioned that because the Deadpool and Deadpool 2 would be great movies to make video games off of. As far as like what the gameplay or genre would be like, probably similar to the Deadpool game that was released. Like an action and or platformy kind of game. I'm not really sure what other genres he would really fit well in. Now he has made appearances in games like the Marvel Ultimate Alliance games. He's a playable character, and Marvel, what was that called? That actiony MMO that no longer exists. He was a playable character in that, and was a lot of fun. I think it's just Marvel Heroes, but yeah.
And
that would be
he's
interesting.
he's made appearances in Marvel vs. Capcom games too.
Yeah, that's right. And he has those great meta jokes. Like whenever he goes up against Magneto, he's like, "Magneto, welcome to die."
Which I that was a solidly good bad game. The X-Men arcade cabinet.
Yeah.
So much bad ADR. I am Magneto, master of magnet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seriously, at some point, Google search X-Men arcade game Magneto voice lines. They are almost all just solid gold.
You know what? I'll tell you what. Let's
Are
get a
they
little
English
originality
type
here.
things? Do what now?
Oh, I was just gonna say for my Deadpool suggestion, instead of another like third person actiony kind of game, I think what would be cool is I mean, if you could toggle it to third person, like the Bethesda games allow you to do, but mainly first person, like an open world RPG kind of thing where you explore like a city and do jobs and have a potential, you have like a potential main storyline, but you just immediately discard it like one does when playing a Bethesda game. The chaotic nature of him, I think, would really lend itself well to it, because like those games where you earn currency or reputation or whatever, and that allows you to do all these things. Like you could do all sorts of stuff with that, because you could you could build and customize weapons. You could or if you could do even the whole like Deadpool and the Mercs for money thing, where you could like have an empire. That would actually be another really fun game. Is like a game that's kind of like XCOM, where you like manage your like base and or business, or like one of those tycoon games or whatever, but it's Deadpool and the Mercs for money. And yeah, you can go out there and actually do the fighting, but the main thing is like managing the whole like Deadpool mercenary empire. I think that'd be a really fun game.
Honestly,
Yeah,
I feel like for Deadpool, it needs to be something that you wouldn't expect, like a Dance Dance Revolution clone.
I appreciate the meta nature of it, but at the end of the day, it's a business, and you need to move those copies.
Right. Exactly. Well, yeah, you could, So what I'm thinking of is Fast and Furious, because there's Fast and Furious video games, but I would like to see it at less, more, hey, doing the heists and things like that.
Well, you know
as opposed to
what
a
that
Grand
is,
Theft.
right? That's Saints Row 3.
Grand Theft Auto. It's what now?
Saints Row 3.
Ah, okay. That's a video game that would probably make a good movie.
Well, I mean, it's really just it's a Fast and Furious game.
Yeah.
Okay.
In like the only thing that the only way it's not a Fast and Furious game is that it's not called Fast and Furious.
Right.
It's like they had a competition as those games came out and the movies came out of which one could be more over the top. It was like a rivalry.
Right. Yeah. Well, Saints Row is also yeah. Yeah. Saints Row.
That would
is
be a really fun, not a live action movie, but like an animated movie or computer animated movie of Saints Row would be really fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be kind of fun. Of course, I'd like to see them make a Fallout movie, but that's me.
I feel like that would be better served as a series, like a premium television series.
Right. Yeah, that would be. I think that would be, or like a Netflix series or something like that. But
Well, yeah, when I say
right, Neil,
television, I mean any
yeah,
anything
yeah, any series format.
that's
Right.
implied.
Right. Yeah. So Neil, what about you? What's your ultimate, for movies that are coming out? What's the best video game?
I'm not really sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was not a question that I was anticipating having to answer.
Well, it sprang to mind too. I was just like, what would be a good, what would we like to see, and what would make it a good video game? Because we know what we like. That'd be a good question for our listeners.
Yeah. Describe in the comments section or in an email to us. You can email us on our website. I think right now the email just goes to one of my Gmail accounts, but you can describe to us your thing, and if we like it, we might read it on the air next time.
Bonus points if it's not a comic book based IP because it's more difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
like
part of my thing. I was thinking like I know a game that I think I would actually really enjoy seeing adapted. Something I would really enjoy seeing adapted into a video game format. And I think you could do a good job, although it would be tricky. I would love to see someone make a really good Watership Down game.
Okay, really good. That's a different thing. So
I don't know how you would do it. I know it could be done. It would involve probably needing it would involve probably needing to make more than one type of game.
yeah.
But when the hell did I buy this game? Sorry, I've been going through my Steam library a little bit here, and apparently I own Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, which I know we've talked up hugely, but I don't remember ever buying.
Huh.
Similarly, I appear to own a copy of Hotline Miami, which I don't remember buying. And a copy of Surgeon Simulator, which I don't remember buying.
Surgeon Simulator. Oh my goodness.
And a game called No More Room in Hell, which I've never even heard of.
It's a first-person shooter.
Okay, well, apparently I own it.
A zombie-based one, kind of, Left 4 Dead-esque.
So, right. So,
and
interesting.
A normal lost phone, which I don't remember buying.
So, interesting thing. Watership Down does not have a video game per se, but it has an RPG released in 1970.
Really?
A pen and paper RPG.
Yes.
That's cool.
Bunnies and Burrows. And then it's a second edition in 1982 and modified by Steve Jackson Games as an official GURPS supplement.
Very cool. You could probably also pretty easily adapt Pugmire into a Watership Down type game. And if you're not familiar with Pugmire, you should really check out Pugmire.
Pugmire?
Yes,
Pugmire. RPG where you play as adorable dogs and cats.
Yes, and you are part of what Pugmire.
2 words?
1 word.
Okay.
You are one of the core tenets is you're playing as a dog as dogs and or cats. And
Realms
one
of
of
Pugmire.
yes, the central tenet of the Code of Man is be a good dog. Sorry, Monarchies of Mao is the cat one.
Be a good dog, protect your home, be loyal to those who are true. Those are the words of the Code of.
Yep, because humans have vanished.
That actually looks pretty interesting.
Yeah, and it's really solidly good gameplay too.
Yeah. So that's interesting. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Probably, honestly, adapt Pugmire to rabbits and do Watership Down that way.
Yeah. Well, it's Realms of Pugmire. It's got its own website.
Mm-hmm.
So
So we got about 20 minutes. Few other good games that are worth mentioning. I don't think we got to. The Super Star Wars games were some really solidly good action platformers on the Super Nintendo that followed. There were 3 games, and they followed the plot pretty well, except you ended up fighting Darth Vader a lot. Although frequently Darth Vader ended up being someone masquerading as Darth Vader, as I recall, as well. Kind of like a la you fight Bowser at the end of every castle in the original Mario Brothers.
Right.
Of course, okay, so we're talking about movie tie-ins, or are you talking about the movie tie-in versions, or?
Well, the Super Star Wars, Super Empire Strikes Back, uh, and Super Return and Super Star Wars Return of the Jedi were games that were literally based off of the movies.
Right.
They followed the plot pretty much to a T,
I remember
except you ended up
playing
getting Darth
Empire.
Vader a couple times more often than usual.
Yeah, I remember the final duel with Vader at the end of Empire was pretty epic.
Mm-hmm.
It's rare
And
to have it live up to the actual epic scene like that. It actually felt like it.
hmm there are also some vehicle segments, doing either a land speeder or piloting an X-wing, and you could play as Luke or Han or Leia, if I recall correctly.
Or
In each,
Chewie.
yeah, and everyone
Oh,
played a little bit differently too.
Yeah, they all had like a
right.
special ability or like advantage to
Right.
playing them.
Mhm.
So speaking of X-wings, belated signal boost. Saw a Danger Zone X-wing version.
Oh yeah, it was like a
Somebody
montage of X-wing footage from the movies set to the tune of Danger Zone from Top Gun.
exactly.
Pretty great.
Yeah,
Nice.
it is awesome. Yeah, because the thing is that when you do it to the right music, yeah, it looks pretty fucking awesome.
See,
I
for
mean,
some reason, when you said Danger Zone, I immediately went to the X-Men training simulator, the Danger
Danger
Room.
Room. Yes.
Danger
Um,
Room, right? Yeah.
Which was also a comic shop in Columbia, Missouri, or at least it was for a while. Danger Room Comics, and that's a name that honestly is a little obvious, but still good.
Right. Well, the thing is there are multiple videos set to it.
hmm
Um. So yeah. Huh. So, yeah, it's pretty weird.
Well, some other games I wanted to touch on while we're wrapping up here.
hmm
Hmm.
There's The Warriors by Rockstar Games,
I'm out and
and
play,
that was pretty solid. It was actually it was a good co-op game. It was somewhat open world, but there's like a lot of story going on, decent voice acting, pretty good graphics for the time, pretty solid, pretty fun. And there's like a little brawl mode where you just go in and just do kind of like a melee with different gangs and stuff, like a free for all thing. It was just a interesting little game, and I didn't really know anything about the movie until the game was getting press. So I'm kind of grateful for that because then I actually watched the movie, and the movie's classic.
Yeah, I remember I finally went and saw the Warriors at Alamo back when movie theaters were still a thing. Um,
Rip.
Back in my day.
and it was it and it's a really good movie. It definitely deserves its classic state.
Oh
What
yeah.
I found interesting about it is it was based on like it was like based on Greek history. It was such a weird
Mhm.
like thing, like
Sort
origin
of
story, like
there was
loosely based on
yeah.
a story from Greek history.
Well, the movie was
Right.
based off of a book, first of all. And the book apparently drew a fair bit of inspiration from Greek myth.
Right.
The book came out in '65.
Yeah, and the movie came out when I was in fourth or fifth grade. Fifth or sixth grade.
In '79.
Yep.
Can you dig it?
Another thing I have to mention. Here we go. Let me take a big breath here. Peter Jackson's King Kong, the official game of the movie. This was a launch game for Xbox 360. And it was one of those weird games where like it was on the quote unquote current gen and also on the quote unquote next gen at the same time, where they had like the various ports. I played on the 360. It looked really good for the time. Notoriously, some of the most easiest achievements ever. Just play through the game once, and it's a relatively short game. Yeah, you get all the achievements. That's 1,000 gamer score right there.
Wasn't it one of those games where like one of the achievements was start the game?
Yeah, basically, it was like, hey, you started up the first
Reach
level.
level
Good
1
for you. You pressed the button real good, kid. Yeah.
Right.
Take
But it
one
was a pretty
step
solid
to the
game.
right.
And it very
That's
much,
the time warp.
didn't follow the story.
It's a jump to the left.
Now, Space Jam is a terrible, terrible game.
It's
A really
terrible
shitty
movie.
basketball game. Yeah, the movie was terrible too. It was exciting as a kid because it was like, oh hey,
Space Jam
cartoons and Michael Jordan.
is a movie that I feel falls into so bad it's good territory.
I have to rewatch it to really decide.
It is an enjoyably bad movie in my opinion.
Oh, also
Right.
a little subgenre here of games based on movies. The subgenre of completely missing the point. So I would like to submit these for completely missing the point. The Hunt for Red October. There's no nuance, no political stuff, none of that. It's just, hey, you're in a sub and you're blowing up other subs. Hey. And then Fight Club. All sorts of social commentary and nuanced stuff. And hey, it's a shitty game where you
It's
fight,
a
like in
crappy
the Street
Virtua Fighter
Fighter
clone,
games.
yeah.
Like a real
Right.
fighting. But hey, characters from the movie, like
Mhm.
Ace and
That's automatic. Yeah, it's automatic license to print money.
yeah, it's just my God. I couldn't I could barely believe that it was a thing, that it was, like when I heard about it, I'm like, really, this is really gonna happen. And
Yeah,
it's
it's
depressing.
gonna happen.
Mhm. And you have to remember that also, very importantly, the Fight Club video game features an unlockable character if you beat the story mode. Fred Durst,
Oh God. What a
lead
wow.
singer for Limp Bizkit. For those of you who don't know who Fred Durst
Yards.
is,
I'm so jealous of you people. Yeah.
I
I
feel
love that
like
that's
we
a
should.
reward.
Yeah, I feel that we should definitely go off on. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. Before we get too much further, just remembered another literary adaptation game, and this one's actually pretty pretty well appreciated by the adventure game crowd, and that is I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, which is one of the very rare games where the creator of the game was also part like the creator of both media was the same person. Harlan Ellison worked very hard on the video game as well, as I recall.
Before he died.
Yeah.
So, speaking of literary-based video games, you've got to go to The Witcher.
Oh yeah.
Technically
Good point.
speaking, the Witcher games by CD Projekt Red are all set after the books.
But the
They
IP
are
is based on
they are
just a book, though, is
sequels.
the point.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they are part of that story. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they're video games based off a book.
Yeah.
They're directly relating to it.
Another thing I wanted to mention briefly is the Matrix IP. It had this. I mean, I guess for examples of tie-in, this is perfect because there's this game called Enter the Matrix, and like the creators of the Matrix were actually very involved with it because they're doing a whole like tie-in thing that was like bridging the events of the first movie and the sequel, and it was just kind of like so. And of course, a lot of people were disappointed that you didn't actually get to play as like Neo or Morpheus or like characters you actually care about that are prominent in the movies. But then there was also a game that came out several years later called The Matrix Path of Neo,
Path of Neo.
where you do get to play as Neo, and it's friggin' awesome. And the game is really fun. It's actually a really good game, so I recommend that if you want to get your Matrix.
That was actually what I was laughing about, because at the end of Path of Neo, because it goes up to the end of the Matrix 3, and there's a really funny insert from the Wachowski siblings explaining how the movie ended and how that really doesn't make for a very satisfying video game ending. So here's a giant Agent Smith to fight instead.
That's funny.
So, all right. So there are several unexpected games that were based on books. I don't know if either of you have played Enslaved Odyssey to the West.
I'm sorry.
Enslaved Odyssey to the West.
Familiar with it, haven't played it.
It was a game that I was wanting to buy, which is based off of Journey of the West.
Right, exactly. So that was based off of Journey of the West. Evidently, Assassin's Creed is based on a series of books or a novel called Alamut. Nothing is absolute reality. All is permitted. Is the heart of it's a Slovenian novel published in 1938.
Oh.
Yeah. So there's that. And let's see. I guess Spec Ops: The Line is based on Heart of Darkness.
Oh yeah, must have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Metro 2033, based on a Russian novel.
It's based off of the Metro
same thing.
novels, as I recall.
Exactly. BioShock, oddly enough. It's actually though
Sort
it's
of.
a takedown of Ayn Rand.
Yeah,
It's kind of like satire on him.
well, it's not even a satire. It's just sort of a here is Randian philosophy sort of taken to its extreme.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Enjoy.
So yeah, I mean it's based on those concepts, not so much the novels themselves.
Yeah.
So ways to increase, ways to expand your.
So some other things I have in my notes here. I don't think we talked about it pre-show, but I don't know if we actually mentioned Riddick Escape from Butcher Bay is actually a really good game.
Yeah, it was.
And then the later game, Riddick Assault on Dark Athena. I talked about shitty movie with a shitty game. Blues Brothers 2000 is a great example of that. Original Blues Brothers movie was great. Sequel sucked, and the game is just horrific.
Well, here's one way you know that the sequel to the Blues Brothers sucked. It had Jim Belushi in it. And I don't mean any offense to Jim Belushi, but he is a poor substitute for his brother. The only manner in which they are similar is that they both look kind of similar and have the same last name and are both comedians, but John was the greater talent.
I think another good subgenre here is games that have a premise that is perfect for a video game and still manage to fuck it up. So like Transformers the game was actually really shitty when it's all about giant robots blowing the shit out of each other. Like, how do you fuck that up? But they found a way. And there have been some good Transformer games over the years, by the way. But this particular
Transformers War for Cybertron by Platinum Games was really good.
There you go. But this particular one was just, like a cash in after the first modern Transformers movie was a big hit.
You got the Michael Bay Transformers.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's your problem right there.
The first one was actually good, to be fair. Sequels have been
okay, in my opinion, but whatever.
But yeah, there's all sorts of weird stuff I found. There's a Wayne's World game. It's like a weird ass platformer. There's apparently a Little Nicky Game Boy game. Oh God, it hurts me that exists. There's a Rocky Super Action Boxing, which is just you playing as Rocky against Clubber Lang. It's just Mr. T. It's just Rocky 3, but
just really Mike Tyson's Punch Out, except with a Rocky coat of paint slapped over it. Probably not as good.
Right. Well, that's the thing, is it wasn't like you didn't have this whole colorful cast of characters like Punch Out. It was just like one fight, more or less. It just, I don't know, it seemed dumb.
Right. Well, there's a Cobra video game. Anybody remembers that?
Oh my God! They made a game out of that.
It's a side-scrolling shooter. Yeah. So yeah, there's a video game for almost everything.
Oh yeah, also obligatory mention of Superman 64, one of the worst games in existence.
Yeah, like
Just look it up. You'll see how bad it is.
it's
YouTube will pick me
I remember a friend of mine buying it and
And regretting that poor life decision.
I remember he invited me and a couple other friends over. Be like, hey, I just got the new Superman game. We should come over and none of us could were anything resembling competent at the game. And this was, late middle school, early high school, so the height of my gaming prowess.
Right. So when you had all those super fast reflexes for the shooters and all that.
Yeah, like back when I could play Mega Man 2 and beat Quickman's level without using Time Stopper.
I was wasting fools and Half-Life and Unreal Tournament and all that.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's happened once again. You've whiled away another perfectly good hour and a half listening to us talk about random crap. And we're gonna do it again in 2 weeks. Please stay healthy out there. Keep washing your hands. Keep staying away from people. Wear a mask when you go out in public, just in case you might be sick and not know it. Be excellent to each other, but hold off on the partying for another month or two.
Right. Party at home.
Yeah.
We will have to one of these days, see that new Bill and Ted movie, see what everyone thinks.
Oh
When it-
yeah.
Oh
that
God,
happened.
yes. Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to see it.
So we'd have to do a double feature: Bill and Ted and John Wick.
Well, we could do a triple feature and also do the new Matrix movie when it comes out.
This is
I
true,
still don't know
well,
how they're
John
going to
Wick
make a fourth Matrix movie when Neo died at the end of 3.
I'm just not thinking about it.
Right?
Choosing not to
Yeah.
think about it.
Like, he was dead.
That
He
doesn't.
pulled
Yes,
the
but he was in
Jesus
the Matrix.
allegory entirely. I guess
Yeah.
now they're gonna have to bring him back to life again.
Well, there's talk about it being a prequel. One of the previous incarnations of them. Yeah.
That would
Well,
be
whatever.
that
We'll
would
see
not
what
be the
happens
best of
there.
allegories then, because when Jesus comes back the second time, that's it, folks. Game over. GG. There's no more story after
Yeah.
that. That's the last page.
Right? Exactly.
There is a point there, so maybe they won't make Matrix 5 then.
So,
Well, if they do, we'll talk about it on Geek Fanthology.
all right.
This has been Neil,
The one true Ben.
and
Mike?
we will talk to you again next time. And now the awkwardness of trying to get Craig to leave the building.
Get the hell out.
This podcast is a production of Working Theory Productions. It was brought to you by the letter pi and the number 3.141593265358979328462643. Opening theme is Ultra Mega Hyperstorm, and ending theme is March of the Mind, both by Kevin MacLeod. If you enjoyed this podcast or know someone who would, please consider sharing it on your social media, sending us an email, leaving us a comment, liking us on wherever you happen to be liking us, subscribing or following if that's the thing you can do, leaving a comment, etc. Anything that really helps to build the algorithm. If you really enjoyed this podcast, please consider supporting us, either with a one-time donation on our website through PayPal, or a reoccurring one on Patreon at patreon.com/workingtheory. A final thought. You know what? No, I don't have any final thoughts today. Sorry.